Om Sat Gurubhyo Namaha. My pranams to my Paramaguru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam. I am Aishwarya Harish, the Cultural Coordinator, Nrityodaya, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai. We are very happy to have all of you gathered here today for the 19th session of the Young Researchers Forum, hosted by Nrityodaya Mumbai and Center for Excellence, Art and Culture, Shasun Jain College, Chennai. It has been a constant and conscious endeavor to bring each of these sessions as a silver lining to the dark hanging cloud of the pandemic. We are happy that so far this forum has covered a wide variety of topics from literature, spirituality, ritual, music, architecture, puppetry, and dance as an ongoing online initiative with the objective to provide a worthy platform for young researchers. We urge all those who are interested to present their work to kindly send in a mail to us on tyrforum@gmail.com. We begin our 19th session on an auspicious note with a prayer being rendered by Ms. Radhika Muthukrishnan.
वागर्ताविव सम्पृक्तौ वागर्त प्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ। शृङ्गारहास्य करुणा रौद्रवीर भयानका बीभत्साद्भुत संज्ञौ चेति अष्टौ नाट्यौ रसाः स्मृता रतिर्हसिश्च शोकश्च क्रोधोत्साहौ भयं तथा जुगुप्सा विस्मयश्चेति स्थायी भावाः प्रकीर्तिताः। न भावहीनोऽस्ति रसः न भावो रसवर्जितः परस्पर कृता सिद्धिः परस्पर कृता सिद्धिः तयोरभिनये भवेत्। व्यञ्जन औषधि संयोगः यथा अन्नं स्वादुतां नयेत् व्यञ्जन औषधि संयोगः यथा अन्नं स्वादुतां नयेत् एवं भावा रसाश्चैव भावयन्ति परस्परं भावयन्ति परस्परं।
Thank you so much for that wonderful rendition, for opening this session with this wonderful prayer song. I now call upon Dr. Jayashree Rajagopalan, Director, Nrityodaya, the Academy of Performing Arts, to welcome the gathering.
Om Shri Sadgurubhyo Namaha. Namaskar. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you for this 19th session of the Young Researchers Forum, initiated by our institution, Nrityodaya, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai, and the Center of Excellence, Art and Culture, Shankarlal Sundarbai Shasun Jain College for Women, Chennai. We've been very fortunate to have the blessings of our revered Guru, Padma Bhushan, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, who inaugurated the series with an extremely inspiring speech, stressing the importance of the need for research in Indic studies to reiterate the relevance of our ancient knowledge to strengthen the common Indian psyche. My humble pranams to you, dear Paduka. Thank you so much for being a pillar of strength to us. Your presence is our strength. Very, very warm welcome to you for this session. Our young researcher today is Mahati Kannan, the grandniece of my guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, a chip of the old block. I have seen her grow into a beautiful dancer and singer. And what used to amaze me was, even as she was a schoolgirl, she had an innate craving for reading the classics of Tamil and English. You know, even the book, the Tamil classics used to be, formidable for us to even see the size of the book, but she would delve into it and also try to study the historicity of it. The outcome of that is she is blossomed into a very beautiful artist and a research scholar. We're very proud of you, Mahati. Welcome to this forum. And I can see that you are a very worthy torch bearer of your tradition. My humble and grateful pranams to Dr. Bharat Gupta ji, who indeed is a walking encyclopedia, a repository of knowledge, a true Vidwan, as we would say in our language, who has acquired Vidya from the Shastras, from the Shastris, and from Gurukula Vasam, he has gained knowledge of music. We are indeed extremely blessed, and we are very grateful to you, sir, for having honored our invitation and being with us today. We are looking forward to a very enriching session. It is my privilege to welcome you for this forum. And once again, thank you all who have joined us this evening to be with us for this session.
Thank you, Dr. Jayashree. I now invite Dr. Rajshri Vasudevan, Director, Center of Excellence, Art and Culture, Shasun Jain College, to introduce our guests for today.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In the august presence of our Guru and with her blessings of Dr. Padma Subramaniam, we commence our 19th session, very successfully conducted and with a wide variety of topics. It is often said that erudite scholars are not very popular teachers. Great teachers may not be great writers. Great writers may not have oratorical skills, but sometimes we do come across this very rare combination, like our own Guru, who is a scholar, a writer, a teacher, many parts rolled into one. And one such is our expert today, Dr. Bharat Gupta, former faculty, Delhi University, trustee and executive member, IGNCA. Classicist, theatre theorist, sitar and sur bahar player, musicologist, cultural analyst, and newspaper columnist. He is an international authority on the Natya Shastra and classical Greek theatre. Trained in both Western and traditional Indian educational systems, his writings expound the essential values of both the Eastern and the Western philosophical systems. He has altered the perception of ancient Greek drama as the origin of Western theatre and established its closeness with ancient Indian theatre as part of an Indo-European construct. He has expounded extensively on classical Indian Sanskrit texts, including the Dharma Shastras, and the need to include arts in the modern curriculum. His experiences are immeasurable. More than 35 years, he has lectured extensively at the universities in India, North America, Europe, and Greece on Indian music and theatre theory. He is a visiting professor to Greece, member of the jury of the Onassis Award for Drama, visiting faculty at the National School of Drama, Delhi, trustee and executive member, Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, teaching at major centers and academies of the arts in India, Satyajit Ray Film Institute in Kolkata, Music Academy Madras, India International Center, Habitat Center, Kalakshetra Chennai, Vivekananda International Foundation, among many others. His publications are innumerable. A few of them: Dramatic Concepts, Greek and Indian, which have had several editions, as you can see. Natyashastra, Chapter 28, Ancient Scales of Indian Music, 12 Greek poems into Hindi, India, A Cultural Decline or Revival, 120 video lectures on YouTube. He is proficient in Hindi, English, Sanskrit, and Greek languages. That's a huge arsenal of literary talent, sir, and we are extremely fortunate and honored to have you in our midst today as a guest. I know you are extremely busy. In fact, in the morning, he had the viva of his student from JNU, and in spite of all his engagements, he has agreed to be with us. So, namaskar, and thank you so much for your presence today, sir. Our young researcher, as was said, a chip of the old block, who is carrying a huge legacy on rather frail shoulders and doing full justice to it. She's a Bharatanatyam performer, as Mahati Kannan, belongs to the 4th generation of the illustrious family of film director Shri K. Subramaniam. In academics, she has a BA English Literature from Ethiraj College, MA History of Art, National Museum Institute, New Delhi, BFA and MFA Bharatanatyam Shastra University, Tanjavur, where she was a topper. She's had a Nritya Praveshika, Nritya Visharada, and Nritya Shali degrees, 108 Karana courses from Nrityodaya, Chennai. Her experience includes as teaching faculty at Nrityodaya, and we are very proud to say that she's currently the research assistant in the Center of Excellence Art and Culture in our own department. Her gurus include the doyen of classical dance, Dr. Padma Subramaniam. She's the daughter of well-known Veena Vidwan, B. Kannan, musician and composer, and Dr. Gayatri Kannan, musician and dancer. She is a disciple of Dr. S. Sundar Chennai and Srimati Vaishnavi Anand Singapore in music. Her awards and achievements include Best Individual Performance, HCL Concert Series 2017, the Music Academy Chennai. Outstanding Performer Award, Mid-Year Series 2018, the Music Academy. She has performed for the Music Academy Spirit of Youth Festival 2015. She has accompanied Dr. Padma in her performances in many parts of India and abroad and given solo recitals in many prestigious sabhas in Chennai. Today we will see her in a different avatar, and that is as a young researcher commenting on the bhava and rasa in select plays of Shakespeare. The floor is yours, Mahati Kannan. Before she begins, I would like to take this opportunity to place this session as a tribute for the dear departed soul of Pujya Prema Pandurang, whom I think Mahati also accepts as her Manasika Guru, and who was a colossus in her own right because she strode the dual worlds of Indian literature, which she taught for several decades as a professor, and the traditional Indian texts, which she was so fluent with. And we miss her presence today, but I'm sure she's extremely happy wherever she is listening into this session. So this is our tribute to her. Thank you. Mahati, you can proceed.
Sadgurubhyo Namaha. My humble pranams to my Guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam. My humble pranams to our esteemed expert scholar, Dr. Bharat Gupji. My pranams and sincere gratitude to Dr. Jayashree Rajagopalan and to Dr. Rajshri Vasudevan for giving me this opportunity to present this paper. Before I begin, I would like to mention here that this paper is a very condensed form of my dissertation that I submit for my BA English degree in 2017. It is a very small, very humble attempt at bringing together two giants of literature and theatre, Bharata and William Shakespeare, And I request you all to pardon any mistakes or shortcomings in this attempt. Before I go into the actual presentation, sorry, I seem to have lost the connection for a second. Am I back online?
Yes, you're on screen now.
Okay.
But your screen sharing has stopped. We can see you.
I'll share it again. Please bear with me.
Yeah, we can see your screen also now.
Okay.
I think you can just make it full screen.
Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, we can see the full
Yes,
screen
it's
now.
fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Yes.
So before I go into the actual presentation, on your screens, I think you can see on one side, you have the stage of the Globe Theatre of Shakespeare. This is the reconstructed stage that was inaugurated in the late 1990s. The original one burnt down in the mid 1640s or so. On the other side, you see the sculpture of Bharata Muni, author of the Natya Shastra, designed by my guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, and currently housed at our Bharata Ilambu Foundation for Asian Culture in Pattipulam, near Mahabalipuram. The Natya Shastra, authored by sage Bharata, is the earliest extant treatise on the science of drama. The concepts of rasa and bhava are discussed in chapters 6 and 7, respectively. The theory of rasa is the mother of Indian poetics. Literature in India can be divided into two categories: Shravya Kavya, literature to be heard, and Drishya Kavya, literature to be seen. Theatre is Drishya Kavya. It can be seen and enjoyed. Any performance, if properly presented, is said to result in an aesthetic experience that will ultimately pave a path to peace of mind. Development of these arts required an intellectual exercise to understand the characteristics of characters and the psychoanalysis of situations. Hence, the rasa theory was born. Bhava is feeling. It is called so because it can be felt or experienced. Bhavayanti. Rasa literally means essence or taste. Rasa is the aesthetic experience derived from watching a performance or reading a work of literature. The Natya Shastra speaks of 8 rasas, 9 in some recensions. Shringara, Hasya, Karuna, Raudra, Veera, Bhayanakaha, Bibhatsa, Adbhuta Sanyam, Cha iti ashtau natye rasaha smritaha. The Natya Shastra says, Na hi rasadrite kaschid arthaha pravartate. As Dr. Manmohan Ghosh translates this, no poetic meaning proceeds from speech without any kind of sentiment. The very purpose of drama is to create rasa. Bharata elaborately explains in 36 chapters the various ways to facilitate the creation of rasa. The process to obtain rasa is given as a formula in the Natya Shastra. Vibhava, Anubhava, Vyabhichari Samyogat, Rasa Nishpatti. That is, a combination of Vibhava, Anubhava, and Vyabhichari Bhava produces rasa. Vibhava is the cause that triggers an emotion. Anubhavas are the effects of or reactions to that emotion. Vyabhichari Bhavas are transitory emotions that strengthen the dominant emotion and disappear. The Sthayi Bhava, or the dominant emotion, is influenced by the Vibhava, Anubhava, and Vyabhichari Bhavas in varying degrees. When combined in the right proportions and presented, This formula will give rise to rasa. Human beings are said to have as many as 49 different states of mind, but only the first 8 are stable emotions. These 8 are the sthai bhavas. The 8 rasas rise out of the 8 sthai bhavas. The remaining 33 are the vyabhichari bhavas, which do not have a permanent effect. Due to paucity of time, I will not elaborate on these concepts, but I have tried to integrate them into my analysis. Bharata calls Natya as anukarana or imitation. He further develops this by calling drama as anukirtana or glorification and not mere imitation. Hence, Natya mirrors the entire creation of God. This concept is beautifully brought out in the famous lines of Shakespeare, all the world's a stage and all men and women merely players. Emotions are basic to human beings. Drama is a reflection of reality, hence making emotions an integral part of itself. Many English playwrights have explored emotions in their plays, but none, perhaps, like William Shakespeare, the Bard of Avon. Samuel Johnson, in his preface to Shakespeare, remarks thus, quote, "This, therefore, is the praise of Shakespeare, that his drama is the mirror of life, that he who has mazed his imagination in following the phantoms which other writers raise up before him may here be cured of his delirious ecstasies. By reading human sentiments in human language, by scenes from which a hermit may estimate the transactions of the world and a confessor predict the progress of the passions." I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just want to check if my presentation, if you can see me changing the slides.
The slides haven't changed.
Yeah, as of now, it's in the first slide.
I just wanted to check that. Kindly give me a minute. I think it's some issue.
That's okay. We'll wait. The slides are not changing, is it? Is it stuck?
Yes, it appears to be stuck, but it's changing on my screen.
Srividya, is there anything that you can help her out with?
Magdi, please share it with me.
Yes, ma'am. Just give me one.
Have you shared it with Mrs. Srividya, Mahati?
I'm just trying to share it with her, though I'm not sure how exactly to do it now.
Probably you can otherwise just continue. You can just share it to her, and as soon as it comes on, she can inform and you can continue.
Okay.
You can just mail it to her probably. It's still actually blank. It's just saying that you have started screen sharing, but for me at least no slides are coming. Yeah, it started coming. Yes.
I think I'm having some internet issues along with this, so kindly bear with me. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience.
No, you can probably continue your talk and simultaneously share, so that the moment Srividya is able to start screen sharing, we can go back to the slide, if that would be helpful.
I think I just is the presentation visible
Yes,
now?
we can see it now.
Yes, we can see.
Maybe you can keep it on non-slide slideshow mode.
Yes. Then I'll just continue from here.
Yes, yes, continue. Yeah, please.
Sure.
It is a wonder how one man could have entered into the mind of each character, no matter how complex or contradictory they seem to each other. This ability of Shakespeare is well described by Samuel Taylor Coleridge in his Biographia Literaria, when he called the bard our myriad-minded Shakespeare. Drama is a platform through which we are made aware of the otherwise ordinary emotions that people go through every day as they empathize with the characters and the situations that they go through. Bharata, in his Natya Shastra, has recognized that emotions are interconnected and are part of a large equation. Evoking one can trigger a whole chain of reactions. The colorful variety of Shakespeare's plays in terms of emotion lends itself to this equation and gives ample scope for a correlative study with the Bhava Rasa theory of the Natya Shastra. This paper aims at identifying certain bhavas, rasas, and their components by analyzing select scenes from a few plays of Shakespeare. Although Bharata prescribes specific vibhavas, anubhavas, and vyabhichari bhavas for each sthai bhava, he does not restrict the number of causes, effects, and complementary emotions per dominant emotion. In other words, there can be more vibhavas, anubhavas, and vyabhichari bhavas than what is mentioned in the Natya Shastra. Bharata gives only examples, and there can be other combinations too. Unique cases occur wherein certain anubhavas and sthai bhavas will act as vyabhichari bhavas themselves. This makes the system of bhava and rasa quite fluid, just like human emotion. Bharatan theatre and Shakespearean theatre developed in two different societies and so were influenced by the norms and ideologies of their respective cultures. Hence, it will not be entirely possible to find exact matches between the emotional combinations given in Bharata's rasa theory and scenes in Shakespeare's plays. However, all emotions have some universal causes and effects, so some similarities can be identified. Due to paucity of time, I will be taking up only 5 sthai bhavas and their corresponding rasas. Rati, bhava and Sringara rasa. Rati or love, the sthai bhava, leads to Sringara rasa. It has dual bases, love in union, which is Sambhoga Sringara, and love in separation, which is Vipralambha Sringara. The vibhavas or causes for love in union can be the company of beloved persons, seeing, hearing, or speaking to them, pleasures of the seasons, splendid mansions and gardens, etc. And the anubhavas include soft movements of the limbs, sweet words and glances. And the vyabhichari bhavas can include all 33 except ferocity, aversion, fear, and laziness. Love in separation from the beloved can cause anxiety, jealousy, yearning, fatigue, inactivity, sleep, dreaming, and the like. This is one of the unique cases in which certain vyabhichari bhavas themselves can also act as anubhavas. Love in union can be seen in Shakespeare's most famous romantic tragedy, Romeo and Juliet. The events of the play span only 4 days, starting on a Sunday morning and ending in the early hours of the Thursday of the same week, in keeping with the fast-paced teenage love of Romeo and Juliet. It is blind love, which springs out of physical attraction at first sight. That is the vibhava, or cause for their love. This is evident from their descriptions of each other, contained in most flowery language, which refers mostly to their appearances, such as when Romeo says in Act 2, Scene 2, quote, "Two of the fairest stars in all the heavens, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, and they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp. Her eyes in heaven would through the airy region stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night." Unquote. Or when Juliet describes Romeo thus, quote, "Give me my Romeo, and when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun." Unquote. This is Alambana Vibhava, where the person themselves becomes the cause of the emotion. The famous balcony scene takes place in an orchard on a moonlit night. This conducive environment is also a vibhava for their love to blossom. This is Uddipana Vibhava, where the environment becomes the cause for the emotion. Sweet words spoken about the beloved is one of the anubhavas as seen in the aforementioned lines. Romeo and Juliet are consumed by their passion for each other that they are willing to give up their families to be together. This intoxicated passion strengthens the sthai bhava of love. In contrast to Romeo and Juliet, the love between Antony and Cleopatra in the play of the same name is of a much more matured nature. Here, it is a case of adult love blossoming out of mutual admiration and respect. They know each other's character flaws, but they still accept them. It is said that distance makes the heart grow fonder. This separation of Cleopatra from Antony when he goes to Rome or to war is the vibhava for their love to grow more. Cleopatra's separation from Antony when he is in Rome makes her yearn for him. In one scene, she speaks thus to her friend Charmian. "O Charmian, where thinkst thou he is now? Stands he, or sits he, or does he walk, or is he on his horse? O happy horse to bear the weight of Antony! Do bravely, horse, for what's thou whom thou movest? The demi-actress of this earth, the arm and burgeonet of men. He's speaking now, or murmuring, where's my serpent of old Nile? For so he calls me." The main anubhava here is actually sorrow of separation, though not openly expressed in the lines. Cleopatra's yearning for Antony, praising him, imagining that he is calling out to her, are all some of the vyabhichari bhavas that strengthen her love for him. In both Romeo and Juliet and Antony and Cleopatra, the audience understands the depth of love in two different ways, thus giving rise to Sringara Rasa. Shokha and Karuna. Shokha or sorrow gives rise to Karuna Rasa or pathos. It is caused by vibhavas such as affliction under a curse, separation from dear ones, loss of wealth, captivity, and death. The anubhavas are shedding tears, lamentation, dryness of mouth, change of color, etc. And the emotion is strengthened through vyabhichari bhavas such as anxiety, delusion, fainting, sorrow, dejection, insanity, fear, death, paralysis, and so on. King Lear is often considered Shakespeare's greatest tragedy. King Lear's fatal flaw is his ego, which is the cause of his sorrow and suffering throughout the play. Turned out by both his daughters, Goneril and Regan, both his elder daughters, whom he had trusted, this is the vibhava for his sorrow and eventual insanity. So overwhelmed is he by the sorrow of having been betrayed by his own daughters that he begins to juxtapose his own piteous situation with the sufferings and situations of people around him. But he is too delusional to realize this and cannot look beyond his own suffering as he borders on insanity. These Vyabhichari bhavas of delusion and insanity strengthen his sorrow. Death, being another vibhava for sorrow, is seen in his youngest daughter Cordelia's premature end. Extreme sorrow leads to death, which is one of the Vyabhichari bhavas. Cordelia's death not only drives Lear beyond the bounds of sanity, but also causes his own death out of immense grief. The tragic end of Lear is perhaps the strongest Vyabhichari bhava here, which strengthens the sthayi bhava of shoka and evokes karuna rasa in the audience. Krodha and Raudra. The sthayi bhava of Krodha or anger evokes Raudra rasa or fury. Abuse, insult, untrue allegations, threat, vengefulness, jealousy are some of the vibhavas. The anubhavas include reddening of the eyes, knitting of the eyebrows, biting of the lips, throbbing of the cheeks, defiance, etc. And this is strengthened by Vyabhichari bhavas such as indignation, restlessness, fury, harsh words or actions. Mark Antony's speech in Julius Caesar can be taken as an example to demonstrate this emotion. Addressing the people of Rome, the funeral of Caesar, he first speaks thus, quote, "You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason." Antony's initial speech portrays his suppressed anger, which is righteous because of the unjust allegations against Caesar and his brutal murder by Brutus and the other conspirators. This is the vibhava for Antony's anger. The indignation in his speech is the anubhava that rises out of his anger. In the later part of his speech, he speaks thus, "Judge, O you gods, how dearly Caesar loved him. This was the most unkindest cut of all. For when the noble Caesar saw him stab, ingratitude more strong than traitors' arms quite vanquished him, then burst his mighty heart, and in his mantle, muffling up his face, even at the base of Pompey's statue, which all the while ran blood, great Caesar fell. Oh, what a fall was there, my countrymen. Then I and you and all of us fell down, whilst bloody treason flourished over us." This later part of Antony's speech is filled with harsher, more insulting words than his initial speech. This acts as the Vyabhichari bhava that instigates the people against the conspirators. When the same play is performed on stage or read out, Antony's famous phrase, "Brutus is an honorable man," can be rendered with different voice modulations and intonations, each portraying a different shade of anger. This builds up the momentous fury in the audience, thus arousing the rasa of Raudra. Bhaya and Bhayanaka. The bhava of fear, bhaya, rouses Bhayanaka rasa in the audience. It is caused by vibhavas like darkness, roaming in the forest, sight of ghosts, hearing a hideous noise, etc. It is represented through anubhavas such as trembling hands, palpitation, running away, and crying loudly. And the Vyabhichari bhavas include paralysis, perspiration, loss of voice, horripilation, change in color, agitation, and death. Any supernatural experience instills a sense of fear. Macbeth, one of Shakespeare's darker plays, is riddled with supernatural happenings. The scene where Banquo's ghost makes an appearance at Macbeth's feast can be taken as one of the examples. Macbeth first notices Banquo's ghost sitting in the seat reserved for himself at the dinner table. This is the vibhava for his fear. Macbeth, ridden with fear, with having seen the ghost, which nobody else seems to have seen, cries out which is the Anubhava or the reaction to his own fear. The fact that none of the others see the ghost is itself a Vyabhichari Bhava. Further, Macbeth's friends notice his agitation, though they are not aware of the reason. The entire scene where Lady Macbeth is trying to convince the others that her husband is fine, while Macbeth constantly oscillates between his wild reactions to the ghost and trying to maintain his composure, creates a tense, fearful atmosphere. The advantage of such a scene is that when translated on stage, the ghost of Banquo can either be represented to create fear or it can be left to the imagination of the audience. Hasa and Hasya. Hasa or mirth is this Sthai bhava that gives rise to Hasya Rasa. Its vibhavas are showing unseemly attire, impudence, greediness, quarrel, defective limbs, use of irrelevant words, and so on. The Anubhavas are wide opening of the eyes or contracting them, throbbing of the lips, nose, and cheek from suppressed laughter, taking hold of the sides, etc. Laziness, dissimulation, drowsiness, sleep, and dreaming can be a few of the Vyabhichari bhavas. Hasa can be classified into either self-centered laughter, that is when the character laughs, or centered on others when the person makes others laugh. The latter type, that is centered on others, can be seen in Twelfth Night and Midsummer Night's Dream. In Twelfth Night, Malvolio receives a fake letter from his love interest Olivia. He appears in front of Olivia in yellow stockings and cross garters. Cross garters are a kind of ribbon to hold the stockings in place. Yellow stockings and cross garters are two of the things that Olivia despises the most. But Malvolio appears in front of her wearing exactly these. He faces rebuke from Olivia for this, much to the amusement of Maria, Olivia's maid, and her confederates. Adding to the situation, Malvolio stands in front of Olivia, smiling from ear to ear, at a time when Olivia is mourning for her deceased brother and father. The Vibhava here is clearly his odd pieces of clothing. The Anubhava is ridicule and laughter at the expense of Malvolio. This is enhanced through the repulsion of Olivia and Malvolio's shameless puns on his attire, such as cross-gartering and yellow in my legs, which act as the Vyabhichari bhavas and evoke Hasya Rasa. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, the fairy queen Titania is made to fall in love with a donkey-headed Nick Bottom. This ridiculous situation of a beautiful fairy queen falling in love with a mortal man with a donkey's head is itself the Vibhava. The mischievous Puck, the character Puck, drops a juice of a flower called love and idleness on Titania's eyes when she's sleeping. What the juice does is it makes the person fall in love with the first creature that he or she sees. When Titania wakes up, the first thing she sees is Nick Bottom, and she falls in love with him immediately. Once she wakes up, the first thing she says is, quote, "What angel wakes me from my flowery bed?" Next, she hears him singing, and she comments thus, "I pray thee, gentle mortal, sing again. Mine ear is much enamored of thy note. So is mine, and I enthralled to thy shape. And thy fair virtues perforce doth move me on the first view to say, to swear, I love thee." Furthermore, she goes on to comment on Nick Bottom and says, "Thou art as wise as thou art beautiful." In this situation, Titania's behavior is a source of entertainment for Puck, who is the reason for her infatuation with the donkey-headed Bottom. His dropping of the love and idleness juice on Titania's eyes can be considered a Vibhava, for that is what causes her to fall in love with Nick Bottom. The Anubhava then is Puck's amusement with this odd pair. Titania's adoration of Nick Bottom and her use of adjectives such as angel, gentle mortal, wise, and beautiful for a man with a donkey's head serve as the Vyabhichari bhavas and strengthen the comic situation. Bharata Muni speaks of three pramanas or sources in the Natya Shastra. Loka, the world, Veda, the tradition, and Adhyatma, self-experience. It is evident from the works of Shakespeare that he was a keen observer of the society he lived in and the psychology of its people. Furthermore, there is no doubt he would have undergone his fair share of joys and hardships in life. But the manner in which he translated both his observations of the society he lived in, his loka, his inspirations, the Veda, and his own experiences, Adhyatma, into the characters and situations of his plays was enough for his works themselves to be revered as a Veda for playwrights worldwide. Human nature is the same throughout the world. This was the basis for both Bharata as well as Shakespeare, who understood this way of the world. The concept of bhava and rasa is something which every human undergoes in their day-to-day life. The poetic representation and glorification of the same on stage is what is seen in both Bharatan and Shakespearean theatres. The poet is a heroic figure belonging to all ages, whom all ages possess when once he is produced, whom the newest age as the oldest may produce, and will produce always when nature pleases. These words of Thomas Carlyle best describe Bharata and Shakespeare, two immortal giants of literature whose works are relevant to this day. There is a saying in Sanskrit about the poet Kalidasa that when he wrote poetry, all the letters and words would vie with each other to be a part of his writings. Shakespeare too was one such poet whose literary genius painted the different colors of human emotion with a brush of poetry onto the canvas of the mind. Once again, my pranams to my Guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, my pranams to the expert scholar Bharat Gupji, and my sincere gratitude to Dr. Jayashree Rajagopalan and to Dr. Rajshri Vasudevan for this opportunity. Also, my sincere apologies for all the technical hitches along the way. But thank you all so much for your patience, and thank you to all who have tuned in and are watching now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mahati. Technical glitches keep happening all the time, and we've become very used to it because of all the online sessions we've been doing for the past 1.5 years. So all is forgiven, all is well. So I will now request our expert, Professor Bharat Gup, to give his expert comments on Ms. Mahati's presentation. So you have to unmute yourself, sir.
Okay. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ganga Taranga Ramaniya Jata Kalapam Gauri Nirantar Vibhushita Vama Bhagam Narayana Priyam Anangamadapaharam Varanasi Purapatim Bhaja Vishwanatha. So with this prayer to Shiva, I begin some sort of comments on this very beautiful rendition that Mahati made. I am very glad to see that she has undertaken a very important direction of investigation. You see, most of us do not like to apply anything that belongs to the Indian knowledge system, shastras, etc., to something Western. We are very much in the habit of keeping the two apart. So everybody would say that if you are going to comment on Shakespeare, then refer to the tradition of Aristotle and what Aristotle said in his Peripeitiki, that is about poetics, because that is the Shastra of the West, or that is the system of the West. So look upon Shakespeare in terms of their Shastras. Look upon Kalidas, Bhavabhuti, Shudrak, or modern Indian playwrights in the context of Bharat Muni. So keep the two worlds apart. Now, this has been our habit. It's only in last few years that people have started studying it. Of course, I launched upon this years ago, something like 50 years ago, and I produced my book, Dramatic Concepts, Greek and Indian. So I was a renegade, or somebody who went out of the way, exactly with this idea that bhavas, whether sthai or vyabhichari, they are universal. What we have, let us say in the Natya Shastra, is a classification. We are talking about something which is universal. Bhavas don't belong to a geography or to a culture in particular. They belong to the human heart. So wherever there are human beings, whether in England or in Russia or in Greece or in China or South America, as long as there are bhavas, they will be rasa. Now, it is a matter of classification as to which is sthai bhava and which is vyabhichari bhavas, right? 8 sthais and 33, and whether they are separate, as Bharat Muni said, that sthayino eva rasatvam apnuvanti, only the sthai will go to rasa. Others said that no, even vyabhicharis can become sthai, etc. later on. Now, all these are finer classifications belonging to certain cultures, but bhavas are universal. So, Mahati has made a very good attempt, and she has succeeded in it to show that there is universality of emotion and enjoyment of emotion, or tasting the emotion, is the real thing. You see, most people don't know, but I pointed this out almost 30, 40 years ago, that even Aristotle says that the real thing is tasting, yepsis, and the pleasure that you get out of tasting, which is called edoni. In English, there is the word hedon. So it is the pleasure that we get out of the plays, out of theater, and theater is rooted in emotion. Bhav. Bhav is a word which is more encompassing than just the English word emotion, because bhav comes from the word bhu, from the root bhu, which means to be. So you are what you are, but when you are something, you are not feeling just an emotion, you also have a thought. So it is not brainless emotion or thoughtless emotion. It is placed in a context, in a situation, in a story, in a location, everything is there. And yet, the most important thing is that feeling. That feeling is what gets transformed into pleasure. Aristotle called it hedoni, and the Western tradition in the time of Shakespeare, the most famous Shastra was the book by Sir Philip Sidney. He wrote that book on poetics, which was largely a reinstating of Aristotle. So they defined it in that, classified it in that tradition. And here we classified it in our tradition, but bhavavivyanjana, bhavanukirtana, This is the most essential thing which is done in theater. So we should always look at theater as a whole. Wherever it is enacted in the world, and if it is a great work like Shakespeare's or Racine's or Chekhov's or somebody, then it will be able to give us pleasure, and that pleasure would be based on the bhavas. So today, Mahati, it seems, had very little time, so she was not able to apply all the Ashtarasas, all these Thai bhavas, and give examples from Shakespeare. And many more examples can be given. And similarly, examples can be given from other literature also. You know, I have not been able to catch hold of a student who would analyze some Greek plays in terms of emotions, in terms of bhav and rasa classification. I hope that happens one day. Now, it is this kind of work which makes cross-cultural study very fruitful. Because when you say that things are only separate, east is east, west is west, you see, this is a tendency that we have, and unfortunately, as perhaps Mahati may have experienced too, the English departments of India are the greatest victim of this tendency, that they want to keep the Western world apart and say that we know about it, we have the special knowledge, and please don't mix it with something Indian, as if it will get dirtied or sullied or spoiled. Now, that is not the right attitude. That is not the attitude of a Sahridaya. Because one who watches Natya, poetry, theater, painting, sculpture is a Sahridaya who is open to the work which is before the eyes and ears. And Natya is both for eyes and ears. I'll make a small correction to what you said, Mahati, that Natya is Drishya Kavya. No, it is Drishya Kavya, but not only Drishya Kavya. It is Drishya and Shravya. In fact, the fundamental definition of Natya is that it is both. Because this is what Indra asked Brahma. He says, Kridaniyakam ichhamo. I need something to entertain me. Kridaniyakam ichhamo. Yat shravyam cha yat drishyam cha shravyam bhavet. So which has to be both. So this is the greatest quality of Natya, that it is to be seen and heard at the same time. And that is why it was a new art. And wherever you have Drish and Shravya, it is Natya, whether it is cinema, or it is a video, or it is on your iPhone, or it is in a theater hall, or it is on a stage, Rangamancha, whatever. But as long as there is Drish and Shravya together, it is theater. This is the fundamental definition of Indian theater. And it's again universally applicable, because that's how great dramatists, great playwrights all over the world have practiced their art. Now, I would also like to make one more comment, that when you talk about Vibhav and Anubhav, because in our system, tatra vibhavanubhav vyavichari samyogat ras nishpatti. So it is the vibhava which is the actor. Now remember, this classification of alamban and uddipan is not done in Natya Shastra. This comes much later. For Natya Shastra, the actor is the total thing. And also whatever is seen on the stage, that is, whatever is visually seen and heard is vibhava, right? So because Abhinay is of four kinds. It is of four kinds, and in that four kinds, everything is included. Angik, Vachik, Satvik, Aharya, everything is. The Aharya includes the backstage. It includes the front stage, the side stage, the Rupa Sajja, the dress, everything. So Natya Shastra does not make that classification, but this is just, a small comment in order to make you more accurate in your analysis of ancient texts. But the important thing is that the real act of performance, Angik, Vachik, Satvik, and Ahari, the Kriya, Natya Kriya, that may differ from nation to nation, from place to place, from Desha to Kala. In one Desh, it will be one kind, Kala, it will be another kind. Like in Shakespeare, there is not much Angik Abhinay because they come from a tradition in which it is the Vak Pradhan, it is the Bharati Vritti that dominates, it is the speech that is the major content of performance on the stage. Whereas in our theater, there is a huge amount of Angik Abhinay. Of course, not in every kind of play, because in a Prahasan, you can't have that much Angik Abhinay. And you can't have Angik Abhinay in Kaishiki Vritti. Kaishiki Vritti, Shringar Vritti will only be in certain plays, Nataka and the other kind of play meant for Vaishyas, etc. So you have to keep in mind, when you do this analysis, that in plays of Shakespeare, there is not much room to analyze Anubhavas. You see, Anubhava is the Angik Kriya. It is, Anubhava means that which is produced as an impact of Bhava. So when you are very happy, then your face lights up. And if you are doing the Satvik Abhinay, then even your face will light up to the extent, and then your brows will pucker in a way, and your nostrils will be very still, right? You will show your teeth, you will show a smile and everything, and so forth. But on a Shakespearean stage, the Anubhavas are rather limited. On the Indian stage, you exaggerate the Anubhava. And there are different styles of doing it, like Kathakali will do it in one way, Kudiyattam will do it in another way. So the Anubhavas are not the foremost things there, although they are there in terms of emotion, in terms of the Anubhavas as they are given in abstract. But when those abstract things are put on stage, then they will be very different. You see, this is where most people get confused. They say, well, they have a very different kind of acting. Their theater is very different. British theater or European theater is different. How can you compare it with Indian theater? Or Greek theater is very different. Greek theater is rooted in entirely different kind of world. They put on masks. We have no masks, etc., etc. So we should not get confused by these things, because Natya is first and last Bhavabhivyanjana. It is an Abhivyanjana. It is a expression of bhava. Of course, the subject matter is taken from loka or the world, and therefore it will be taken in different ways in different cultures. Like Shakespeare has taken it from 16th century England, and we have our plays belonging to 3rd, 4th century before Christ. So we have that world of ours, the different society, different characters. But all that gets condensed, and it is based upon bhava only. That's why when Bharat Muni defines what are the real contents of Natya, he gives 11 contents, rasa, bhava, hi abhinaya, dharmi, vritti, pravrittaya, siddhi, swaras, tatha, todyam, ganam, rangacha, sangraha. These are 11. So, rasa and bhav, they come first of all. Rasa is the paripak. And rasa is also the paripak in any theater. Many people say there is no rasa. How can we talk about rasa in British theater? How can we talk about rasa in Greek theater? We can't talk about it. They have no. Now, just because Aristotle has not used the term rasa in his analysis, that does not mean that rasa does not exist in Greek theater, or that it does not exist in British or European or Shakespearean theater. No, wherever there is acting, wherever there is Natya Kriya, there will be rasa, there will be pleasure. Let's use a third word, pleasure. Now, in analyzing pleasure, Aristotle calls it hedoni, whereas we call it rasa. He also describes it differently in terms of catharsis as to how does this pleasure happen. This pleasure happens because of catharsis. But most people get confused. They say, well, in Greek theater we have catharsis. We don't have rasa. You see, this is how the confusion is created. Now, wherever there is depiction of bhava through acting, there will be rasa. There will be catharsis. So there will be catharsis even in Abhigyan Shakuntala. There will be tasting or yefses in Abhigyan Shakuntala, and hedoni or pleasure in Abhigyan Shakuntala. The Shastric terminology is different. After all, what does Shastra do? What is a Shastra for? Shastram iti shasanopayam. Shastra is meant to make a discipline, to make a shasan. It is an upaya, an instrument for a discipline, shasan. Shasan here means discipline. So, people make one kind of discipline or look upon that discipline in one way, in one country, in one desh and kal. They look upon the same thing and define it and classify it in different words in another country. But when you go into the real meaning of those words, you find great commonality. This is what you have to bear in mind. And once you bear that in mind, you will be able to see that you can apply the classification of Bharatamuni, of Bhava Bhivyanjana, of the Ras Sutra, Tatra Vibhava Anubhava, etc., to Shakespeare, or to a Greek playwright like Aeschylus or Euripides. And similarly, you can see classical or modern Indian theater in terms of Aristotelian definitions. So this is what I have to say, and now I will look forward to questions from comments from the audience, and of course, our dear young scholar would answer them, and I'll also try to make an attempt. So please go ahead now with the
Yes,
next.
thank you so much, sir. It was, I know it was really tough to condense all that you had to say into a short window that we gave you of about 20 minutes, and our apologies for that. Definitely these deserve many more sessions, but the format being such so that we can accommodate both the researcher and the expert and also have some time for questions. So I'm sure people who are listening in will be requesting us soon for a longer session with you. Some of the questions which have come in, I think one or two are very pointedly for the researcher. So I will ask them first to her. There are two questions which seem fairly similar. You can take it together. One is, what inspired you to look at Shakespeare's plays specifically from the Natyashastra perspective? And there is one more which says, any reason why Shakespeare's plays are preferred over other dramatists despite being several centuries ago?
What inspired me first, it was actually quite coincidental of sorts, because at that time I was in my final year of doing my English literature, and I think I was in second year of doing my BFA Bharatanatyam in distance education mode. And at that time we were studying the Bhava Rasa chapter here in the BFA course, and we were doing Shakespeare in college. So and ironically, both my examinations for both my courses fell at the same time, so I had to do studying of both subjects side by side. And that's when I kind of started. It started with, we were doing Romeo and Juliet in college. We had Shakespeare as one of our majors in the final semester, and we were doing Romeo and Juliet. And I was studying Bhava and Rasa on one side, and I was preparing my notes for Romeo and Juliet on the other side, and Julius Caesar on the other side. And I guess somewhere I started to realize that what I'm studying under Bhava and Rasa, I started unconsciously applying that to the plays of Shakespeare. I started noticing the same kind of, if not all, I started noticing that there were similarities in the reactions that were given, or the causes for the emotions. So I guess that was a starting point for me to consider doing that topic. And again, I did end up doing that topic for my dissertation. And the only reason that I can think of as to why Shakespeare is because he's Shakespeare. I don't know how else to put it. He is probably one of the greatest English playwrights, and everybody keeps, like how we in India we keep going back to Kalidasa. It's like that for the English theatre world, where people, and literature world as well, people keep referring back to Shakespeare. It's a household name in so many different ways. So I guess that's why. And I could also raise, I think the first thing that came to mind when I heard that question was, why Shakespeare, even though he's several centuries old? I would ask the same thing as to why Natyashastra, that's also several centuries old. Why study these texts at all? Because they're several centuries old. I still find relevance. Even though they are centuries old, I still find relevance of those texts in the present times. And specifically for this topic, I still find relevance because we're talking about emotions. Emotions are universal. And we still experience these emotions on a daily basis. And I think that's why Bharata, that's why Shakespeare as well.
One is, of course, it was good to know that two academic curriculums can actually come together. Very often they are poles apart. So there is, since you mentioned Kalidasa, I think there is one question here. Someone has asked, is there any way to change the way people call Kalidasa the Shakespeare of India when he was so much earlier? That is one of the questions which you can take your time to answer that. There are two others specifically with reference to some of the plays. One is in the play Julius Caesar, will Calpurnia's mention of bad omens? Yes, sir. So would you like to answer that?
Yes, I can answer the first question. Why
Yes.
call Kalidas the Shakespeare of India? You see, this is a habit which we have acquired from the British. You see, when the British came and they said, "Now look, who is great here? Who is a great playwright?" So people said, "Okay, have a look at Kalidas, have a look at Bhas and others." So they said, "Okay, he is the Shakespeare of India." Now we are only repeating that thing. So once we start doing what Maiti is doing, then we'll stop saying that. Then we'll say that Kalidas, then we'll use it the other way. That Shakespeare is the Kalidas of England. Because this is how things develop.
Yes, sir. So there are two questions that is very specifically to two texts. One is in the play Julius Caesar, will Calpurnia's mention of bad omens be a reflection of a concern born out of Shringara for Caesar or Bhaya alone?
A very interesting question. I think it. I think there is definitely. I wouldn't say Shringara in that sense. She definitely does love Caesar. That's why she's concerned for him. But I guess the basis of that is more fear rather than Shringara, because she's terrified, she's distraught, she's absolutely she's in full panic mode because she's been seeing all these omens, and it's also kind of like it's foreboding, right? When it's foreboding that something bad is about to happen. And even though Julius Caesar doesn't know that, we as an audience, because we know what's going to happen, we recognize that it's kind of foreboding of Caesar's death, of his downfall. And I think that's the same. That's the same manner in which Calpurnia also would have expressed her fear to him. Yes, there is definitely love for him, and that's the reason for her concern. But I think her going to Caesar and telling him about the omens is more out of fear. But that's just my 2 cents. I may be wrong about it as well.
There is one more. In Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare has portrayed Antonio's melancholic nature. What bhava would you relate to with reference to Natyashastra's perspective?
To be completely honest, I think I need to reread Merchant of Venice to give a correct answer for this. I've read a bit of it a long time ago, but I don't really remember it. Sorry.
I think sir would be able to fill in there. Yes, sir.
See, the play opens by mentioning melancholy, but this melancholy is something which he does not know what exactly it is. In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me. You say it wearies you, but how I caught it, found it, or came by it, I know not. So you see, I know not how I came by it, how I found it, where it came to me, why am I sad? You see, it's not that he is overwhelmed by sadness. So this is Vibhrama. among the Vyabhichari Bhavas, this is Vibhrama. That is, he is totally confused. He is in a state of confusion. So, but that is not going to last for very long. And as a matter of fact, that does not even become shok for him, because he is a person with great capacity to suffer. And so he never gets depressed to the extent that melancholy or shok becomes his sthai bhava.
I think, sir, there is one question which is addressed particularly to you, I think, because maybe an amateurish doubt, but does Greek also have dhatus and vibhaktis like Sanskrit being a classical language?
Please repeat the question. Does Greek?
Does Greek also have dhatus and vibhaktis like Sanskrit being a classical language? Somebody has asked a question
Okay.
because I mentioned that you knew Greek very well.
Okay, now this is not related to theater or drama. This is purely a question on language, Vyakarana. Yes, it does, but not exactly in the same order. But Sandhi is something which is, or Samas, which is constantly used even to this day in modern Greek. And also Vibhaktis. For instance, if you go to Greece today, if you go to, let us say, the main city, Athens, and you ask for a street, there is a street in the name of Socrates. So the street will not be called the street of Socrates or Odos Socrates, but it will be called Sokratu of Socrates. In Sanskrit, like Asya, Sukratasya. In Sanskrit, we'll say Sukratasya. So in Greek, we'll say, and we do say even in modern Greek, Sokratu, because this U, this becomes off. Uska hai. Shashti. So they use vibhakti and they use all the time, even modern Greek uses samas. Right? Like Ramaputra. So that means son of Rama, Ramatanaya. So in modern Greek, they still use, like if there is somebody called Adam and his son would be called Adamapoulos, Adamapoulos. So Poulos means the child, Pouli means the child, Poulos of Adam. So this samas is used here. So this is an example of samas. So samas and vibhaktis, they are constantly used in even modern Greek, and they were used a lot in ancient Greek also. And I gave you the example. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So there is one question from Dilip Honavalli. Since the Greeks and Indians were in contact historically, is it possible that Aristotle and Bharata were influenced by one another's tradition? I think there is a very difference of centuries, but I would rather that you answer.
A question which I thought and pondered over for years and years and tried to discover some possible evidence, epigraphic evidence or literary evidence. Now, we do not have that evidence. However, we may find it one day. Now, I hold that Natya Shastra is much older than Aristotle. Aristotle wrote around 325 BC, something like that. He must have written his work. And Bharat Muni belongs to 5th century BC. You see, this whole date, which is often given by great scholars like V. Raghavan and Kapilavatsyayan, they for some reason they have been just blindly saying 2nd century BC to 2nd century AD. Now it's such a vague statement. You don't know whether it is 2nd century AD or 2nd century BC. So I have in my book given very specific reasons why it is 5th century BC. I have said that Natya Shastra is older than Valmiki Ramayana. It is older than Mahabharata because all the technical terms for Natya, music, this and that, everything comes from Natya Shastra into Ramayana and into Mahabharata. It cannot be the other way. So it is a 5th century BC text. Then we also know that this is a later text. This is the text of Bharata. But before Bharata, there was a Vriddha Bharata who wrote an earlier text which was much larger. So the tradition of Indian Natya, this goes back to several centuries, hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years before that. Because Natya Shastra is very close to the Vedic ritual. It was formulated in that way. So it is certainly a very, very older tradition in India. And now we know for sure that there were so many impacts of Indian sciences on the Greeks. For instance, like Ayurveda. You see, Greek medicine is a product of Indian Ayurveda. And this is very well established. Although there is no epigraphic evidence, but because they have 4 humors which are the same as the 3 Vat, Pitta and Kapha, where Pitta becomes 2. So there is so much evidence. Now, if Ayurveda had traveled in, let us say, 6th century BC to Greece, then it is very likely that some concepts of theater, that is Natya, would have also traveled. Because remember this thing, and nobody will contest this. You cannot contradict now what I am saying, that the whole concept of rasa is based on medicine. It is taken from Atharvaveda, Atharvat. It is taken from medicine. The whole concept of rasa is a concept of medicine. So if medicine had traveled to Greece, then ideas of Natya must have traveled. It is logical to presume. And they may have influenced the theorizing in the Greek world. But there is no very direct evidence that such and such guru went there or the texts were discovered. There is no such evidence. We must admit that also.
There is, I think, one final question, and that is, Mahati can choose to answer if she knows, or Sir will, of course, give so many dimensions to it. Are comparisons between literary works of different cultures unfair to both as they are governed by different societal structures?
That's why I did mention even before I started my analysis, at least for my part, I did mention that Bharata's, at least as far as my own presentation was concerned, Bharatan theatre and Shakespearean theatre, the two culturally, two kinds of theatres that developed into cultures. They developed in 2 different kinds of societies. And naturally, they would have been influenced by the norms and the structures of their respective societies. That's why I said it's not possible to get exact, find exact similarities or something like that between the two. But because of the fact that, again, the basis was emotion, the basis was bhava, and that is something that's universal. Certain similarities can be discovered, and that's exactly what I tried. So yes, they did have they were in 2 different societies, and again, time gap is very large, but still, I think, I'm so sorry. Was there something more to that question than this? I think I
No,
missed.
I think this is it. That is, yes, sir would like to say something. Sir, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. See, the question is very simple. Can something developed in a society be used elsewhere or not? Now, we are using allopathy all over India. Allopathy is a Western science, but we are using it. People have started using Ayurveda in the West also. Homeopathy, of course, started there, but Ayurveda is now being used. So, in the world of technology, in the world of practical things, this exchange has always been going on. There is enough evidence for that. It's only in the world of ideas that we try to make a separation like East is East and West is West. Now, this East is East and West is West is a colonial classification. This was said by Rudyard Kipling. This was said by people who were living under a great pride that they were carrying the white man's burden. And it is only the people in the English departments or sociology departments who ask such questions that they came from different societies and therefore they cannot be compared. Look, societies can be compared. Societies are not that different either. Why do you want to adopt democracy? We have adopted democracy more successfully. We had democracy in certain sections of India. We had democracy within monarchy. Rajarajeshwar Chola had formed so many democratic circles in order to govern the region, and we have evidence for that. The Greek democracy was not like modern democracy. Women could not vote, poor people could not vote, slaves could not vote. The modern idea that every person who is older than 18 years can vote, this was unacceptable to ancient democracies. They said that only some people who can think can vote. And I personally believe that we'll have to abandon the present system of democracy and devise a system of restricted democracy. Time will come very soon. So, societies have to be compared, their experiences have to be compared, how they have lived. There are certain things which they may have in common, certain things they may not have in common. Right? There are many social practices which have no comparison. Like Christians could sell their daughter to their neighbors. The Bible says, please do so. It is permitted in the Bible. Now, that was not practiced anywhere else. Homosexuality was considered a sin in the Western world. But in India, it was considered as something God created. The homosexuals or the homoerotics were not considered as perverse. So there are certain aspects in which now, of course, the whole West has, changed its view. Now, how do societies change? Because they study each other, because they understand each other, they approach each other. So if you're going to look at societies, then you are also going to look at the art within that society, the values of the art, how art is created, what are the principles of art. And art is something which goes beyond society into the universal. Art has that power of going into the universal. So every society produces art, and that art is enjoyed by the Sahridayas or the connoisseurs all over the world. So if I am trained well in music, if I have a musical ear, then I can hear good music from anywhere in the world and enjoy it and appreciate it. So I will make comparisons between art, art forms, and theories of art also.
I think we've come to the end of the session. Is there anything you would like to add, Mahati?
I'd just like to give my thanks again to all of you for this opportunity and for Dr. Bharat Gupta for his incredibly valuable comments. I've learned so much today. So thank you all so much. And again, thank you all to those who have tuned in to watch.
Sir, anything else you would like to add, or I'll come to proposing the formal vote of thanks, so to say.
I'm going to express my heartfelt gratitude and pleasure in having participated, listened to the presentation of Mahati, and the participation of all of you, so enthusiastic and so full of utsaha in the apatkal of Corona. And so you have demonstrated how we can keep our lives uh, joyful even when we are living in great threat. So I congratulate you all. That's all.
So now we come to the end of the session, and I have this very pleasant duty of proposing the formal vote of thanks. I would begin by expressing our deep felt gratitude to our expert for today, Professor Bharat Gupta. As I mentioned earlier, he is a very busy person, and it's a good thing that even in the pandemic, as always, it is said in Sanskrit, a king may be respected only in his kingdom, but a scholar is respected not only everywhere, but for all times to come. So the scholars, the true and genuine scholars, have been the busiest during the pandemic, and everybody wanting to hear from them. So it was, I'm very happy that Sir accepted immediately as soon as he heard not only the topic, but also the researcher who's going to present it. So thank you so much, Sir, for being with us today. And your inputs have been, as Mahati said, incredibly valuable. And they have, I think, more importantly, shown us that instead of keeping the worlds apart, there is so much more joy in seeing art as a unifying force, which is, I think, more relevant today than ever before. So thank you so much, sir, for that. Our thanks to Mahati Kannan, because it was her presentation which made us search for an expert and brought Professor Gupta also into the session. It was a very well thought out, very clear plan that she had in mind when she was trying to compare both the traditions, but doing full justice to both of them as well. So as she pointed out, the societal structures are different, and yet universal values and universal emotions are always the same everywhere. So thank you so much, Mahati, for the presentation. And of course, we would like to thank from Center of Excellence Art and Culture, our secretary, Shri Abhay Shimal Jain ji, and our principal, and all the staff, many of whom are listening in, because we do have an English literature department as well in college. Our grateful thanks is always at the feet of our Guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam. She is the one who gives us the courage to explore so many different topics, because she feels that our tradition is solidly behind us to give us support and strength. So our pranams to her always. On behalf of Nrityodaya Academy of Performing Arts Mumbai, we place our thanks to Mr. Ramesh and Mahindra Finance for stepping in and supporting our cause. And of course, we thank all the people who have been faithful to our session, tuning in session after session, and looking forward to different topics that we place on the table. My thanks to Mrs. Aishwarya Harish for being the MC, Ms. Radhika Muthukrishnan for rising to the occasion and tuning appropriate verses on the Bhava and Rasa from the Natya Shastra, especially for this session. To Ms. Srividya for technical support, and to all of you who would like to be part of our session and are continuing to do so. So thank you so much for this, and Shubharatri.